This is Fort Tyler in West Point, Georgia. This is where the Battle of West Point took place. And I can't find anywhere where there's no noise today, either road noise or someone hammering, so please forgive that noise. Anyway, this is Fort Tyler. Right behind here is the Fort Tyler House, which was a hospital during the Civil War. Anyway, this is where Fort Tyler is in West Point, Georgia, and it's up on this hill, and we'll go there in just a second. This is an information sign here at Fort Tyler about the Battle of West Point. And I think the biggest thing to take from this is that they were fighting for a lost cause, but yet they didn't know it, that General Lee had surrendered. And so it's a week after, exactly a week, because they signed the treaty or surrender was on April 9th of 1865, and this is a week later on April 16th that they had the Battle of West Point. And this is Wilson here. He's the guy that made the raid through Alabama, and then he split off and sent Colonel LaGrange, this dude, to fight General Tyler, who had one leg. He lost his leg in the Battle of Missionary Ridge up in Chattanooga. And all they had was 3 cannons and some rusty muskets, is what the Troup County history book tells us. So Wilson went to Columbus, Georgia, while he sent LaGrange to go up and fight Tyler, and LaGrange won. And then he continued on to LaGrange, Georgia, and there's no relation between the two. But thankfully, he didn't burn down all the homes, the beautiful homes of LaGrange, Georgia, including Bellevue, because of the Nancy Harts, a group of women who got together and pleaded and begged. And so Colonel LaGrange didn't burn down everything in LaGrange, Georgia, but he did burn down the factories and everything. So in any case, I'm here at the Battle of West Point. I grew up in this town. I have an ancestor who was in this battle, so he lived. He lived, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But because he lived and got married, I am here today. And this is more interesting to me since I have a blood relative ancestor, great-great-granddad, who was in this battle. Here's information on the Wilson's raid. Basically, he was following what Sherman's strategic concept was, which is to burn everything down. But thankfully, he didn't burn down the beautiful home that's beside this fort, and he didn't burn down the homes in LaGrange, Georgia, which we're thankful he didn't do that. Unlike Sherman, who raced across Georgia after he burned down Atlanta. But it's worth coming here to this small battle, which actually was pretty significant. Because 1, it was after the war had ended, and 2, it demonstrates the courage and valor of so many who fought for what they believed in, and they didn't give up. And General Tyler lost his life here. This is one of the cannons. It's a replica here at Fort Tyler, and that's pointed in a direction down toward where the river is. I'm sure these trees and everything were probably not here back then. They probably had a vantage point up here as they looked toward the river and the bridges, or the bridge. I'm assuming there were 2 bridges, maybe. There was a railroad bridge and maybe a pedestrian bridge, just like we have today. This plaque honors the women of West Point. They were the last line of defense. during the war, when all the men left, the women had to carry the load of not only raising their children, but farming and protecting their homes and valuables and their money and their heirlooms and so forth. It was a very tough life for them. I've read about my ancestors, and some of the stories are very impacting about what they had to deal with. And these women also protected the homes in a way that they begged the soldiers not to burn them down as well. Like General Sherman was racing across Georgia, but he didn't come through here, thankfully. But Colonel LaGrange of the Union Army did not burn down all of West Point, because we have to give credit to the women here who were part of that process of convincing him not to. This plaque is for General R.C. Tyler. He was a good-looking guy and beautiful blue and green eyes. He was a badass, okay? He lost his leg in Missionary Ridge, and yet he still continued fighting the war. He led his men in the Battle of West Point. Although he lost, he didn't have a whole lot to fight with. I mean, he had 3 cannons. They didn't have a whole lot of muskets. Matter of fact, one history book says they were rusty. The hospital is just right through the woods, straight down there. So that was a Civil War hospital. So there were a lot of people who were recovering, convalescents, people that worked in the hospital that helped fight in this battle as well. Colonel LaGrange served under General Sherman, so General Sherman burned down Atlanta and marched on to the sea, and he's a very infamous general in that war. And so LaGrange served under him, but yet LaGrange was not like him, and he entered politics after the war. So he was very diplomatic because he had that politician blood in him. And he did not burn down West Point or LaGrange, Georgia. He burned down factories in LaGrange. No association between LaGrange and LaGrange. But my ancestor, Thomas J. Teaver, Thomas Jefferson Teaver, served under General Tyler. It's listed in the Troup County history book. And my great-great-granddad survived this war, but General Tyler did not. And he fought. He had one leg in this battle, literally one leg, and not a whole lot to work with. He only had 121 men to fight off thousands of Union soldiers. And this is actually my first time visiting this battlefield, and I grew up here. So I'm actually embarrassed that I haven't been up here. But now that I know that I have an ancestor who's in this battle, it actually adds a little bit more reason to be here and to honor and respect these grounds where people fought and died for what they believed in. This is another view from one of the cannons, and you can see what a great view it is up here on a winter's day. And this battle took place in April, so things are just starting to get green about that time. So I'm pretty sure these trees were probably not here. But perhaps some of them were. Well, here is a picture of General Tyler with one leg. And this placard is about Major Anderson, the youngest Confederate officer here at Fort Tyler. These are artifacts that have been found here at Fort Tyler. Buttons from uniforms and insignia. And this is right next to another cannon that's looking more to the west. I'm at the Fort Tyler Cemetery in West Point, Georgia, here on the 17th of January of 2024. This is information about General Robert C. Tyler of the Confederate States of America. And he was the general at the Battle of West Point, which occurred on April 16th of 1865, a week after they had signed a surrender for the war, and they didn't know it yet. But he had one leg. He lost one of his legs in the Battle of Missionary Ridge up in Chattanooga. This was brutal. These guys fought with all they had. There was only 121 men under his command, and they were all either wounded, convalescents, they were volunteers, they were people who worked at the hospital right next door to this fort. And they lost. They surrendered, but they gave it all they had, and we have to applaud them for that. This is the grave of Brigadier General Robert C. Tyler from the Confederate States of America. He died on April 16th, 1865 at the Battle of West Point in West Point, Georgia, which occurred a week after the Confederates had surrendered. But the word had not gotten out yet. So he is buried here because he died in that battle. He also lost his leg in the Battle of Missionary Ridge up in Chattanooga, a very brutal battle where a lot of lives were lost. And he survived that, but he did not survive the Battle of West Point. He only had 121 men fighting with him, and thousands of Union soldiers were trying to take the fort, and the fort was there to guard the bridges, or the bridge for the railroad, because it was a critical railroad junction. And Wilson, General Wilson for the Union, as part of what they call the Wilson's Raid, he had gone through Alabama, burning down factories and train stations or depots, and he made it all the way here to West Point, that area. He split off his Colonel LaGrange, and while Wilson went to Columbus, Georgia, just down the road from here, Colonel LaGrange came here and won the Battle of West Point. And then he continued on to LaGrange, Georgia, where he burned down factories and things up there. And the Nancy Harts, a group of women, begged the soldiers not to burn down the beautiful antebellum homes up in LaGrange. And they didn't burn those homes down, and you can still visit those in LaGrange, Georgia today, such as Bellevue. These are graves of Confederate soldiers who fought. And there's probably some Union in here too. But my goodness, what a terrible war. What a terrible war.